Hello everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of Eternal Memories. I'm kinda scared, and I guess it's fitting since, well, it's Halloween week when I filmed this, but by the time you may see this, it may be like November-ish because of some stuff I'm doing while I'm editing this. Kinda wanna get out on Halloween, but it wasn't my main priority, and if I do, then my some miracle won't lay. But I don't expect it to. Basically, the reason I decided to choose what's in the title, Castlevania The Eventual Rebirth for WiiWare as the subject for the season premiere, is because, well, quite frankly, Season 1 premiered with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, a game that changed my life. Season 2 premiered with CDI cutscenes because I want to be funny, and now Season 3 premieres with Castlevania The Eventual Rebirth. Does this game change my life again or something? Well, no, it didn't change my life, but it's a very good game, and it's one of the things I like talking about the most on this channel. Obscure games. The obscure stuff that people haven't talked to death before. Not Super Mario Bros., not Castlevania on NES, and not Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I have lots of those games I want to talk about later on the show, but I like focusing on the obscure stuff, and last season I did that quite a bit. This season, I'm going to try and do that more often, just talk about as sure as I can at least, just some obscure experimental games I liked growing up or would like to in recent years. And this is an example of a recent year because I only played this last year. But since this is the first Castlevania episode on the channel, and like with my Mega Man episode, I like going into the history on why I got into a franchise before I cover the main topic of the episode. So I'll do that in a little bit, but here's how the new season will change things. You may notice right now, if you haven't been watching my videos on unboxings for the past few months, I got a new angle. It's not in front of that table to my right, it's instead in front of my door with a Phineas and Ferb stick over me because I don't have much space in my bedroom. But yeah, surprise, it's not a gaming desk I'm behind. I know, it's weird, but the reason because there's lots of cruddy pictures on top of my gaming desk, and there's no space. Otherwise I would film there, because I like my collection. But no, I have some game stuff here, but I just like it here because I'm with my best buddy plush toys, all my Pokemon stuff I've grown up with and still sleep with. But yeah, that's why Eternal Memories is shifting to a third season, because I want to do stuff new, and one of the biggest changes, at least for the time being, is I'm going to use Adobe Premiere Pro for filming and editing. I used this once last year during the worst of 2017 list, I believe, that episode, but I had no experience at all, and I just treated it like iMovie and basically wrecked all the editing tools, and it was a disaster. It may not look so bad because I edited it in iMovie in the end, but I did edit the early stages in Premiere, and it was a disaster in my opinion. But this time I've taken some classes, I'm still taking classes. I think I'm gonna do some decent jobs at hopefully making good videos in this software and doing more advanced techniques. I also got a fancy new camera and mic I've used for streaming recently and unboxings. And I'm not used to the whole microphone and camera shenanigans outside of my laptop cam. This is higher quality than what you're used to. Some videos where I have 60 FPS footage, I'll use 60 FPS film segments. Some like this where I mix and match, I'll use 1080. It depends on the video, but before there was some episodes with 480, some episodes with 720. That depends on my storage size space on my computer. Now I'm not going to have that issue as much, so I'm just going to have things be consistent, be HD from now on unless I make a huge episode. So yeah, that's basically what's going on here with Eternal Memories Season 3. New camera, new mic, new software, new structure, new focus. Let's get into Castlevania The Eventual Rebirth. Unlike Mega Man, Metal Gear, or other popular third-party franchises during the 2000s, I didn't even know that Castlevania existed growing up, even before I stopped buying third-party games in general after a certain experience. It wasn't even something I had any knowledge of or saw in stores personally until at least 2008, when one of the recent DS games came into my local GameStop and I noticed the anime box art. I never even paid attention to that when it happened. Ironically, my first true exposure to anything related to the franchise, as in some I actually used or knew about, was in the form of Captain N the Game Master. Back in 2008, I rented a bunch of stuff from Shout Factory via Netflix, the DVD service, after buying a few DVD sets myself, such as Mario Super Show and Legend of Zelda and Sat AM, and one of those shows I rented was Captain N the Game Master. It really isn't that good looking back. I cannot recommend it, especially with how inaccurate it is to the main source materials that are represented in the show. So when I saw this guy that tags along the main team, I never thought legendary vampire killer or that he had anything to do with Dracula, death, or any sort of spooky ghost. Instead, I just saw him as a womanizer, comedy relief idiot that can't even fight properly. It wasn't until almost 4 years later, in 2011, when I got into the Angry Video Game Nerd and learned all about the series thanks to his retrospective, that I finally learned who this Simon Belmont was actually supposed to be. And thus, my first experience playing the Castlevania game came by shortly afterwards because I was inspired by the AVGN's positive experiences with the franchise. 6 years ago, in 2012, a little game snuck onto the 3DS Virtual Console known as Castlevania The Adventure. It was a Game Boy game that people on Nintendo Life and other forums at the time immediately decried against, warning people not to buy it off the eShop by saying it's the worst Castlevania game in the entire franchise. But since it's a 2D Game Boy game and I'm a huge fan of Game Boy stuff, I wanted to give it a shot anyway, thinking I could just power through it with a store point even if it was tough or cheap. Unfortunately, it was easily one of the most forgettable and boring experiences in my entire life. It wasn't an abysmal game or an unplayable mess, but the whole game was slow, forgettable, and boring. So it wasn't even something I wanted to replay voluntarily because after I beat it once with restore points, I just, ignored it. To make matters worse, Castlevania The Adventure became the last Game Boy game, or at least one of the last Game Boy games to hit the 3DS Virtual Console before they went hard on for NES games and they ignored the Game Boy and Game Boy Color scene outside of a few minor releases here and there. So Castlevania The Adventure basically killed the Game Boy line on 3DS Virtual Console and we never got to see the fantastic sequel, Belmont's Revenge. Nor were there any other Game Boy games that could have been hidden gems, nor did they sneak onto the service. At least we got the Mega Man Game Boy series after this drought, before they killed off the 3DS Virtual Console for good. So I did eventually learn of the reimagining on WiiWare shortly after playing The Adventure, but I didn't really cross my mind on buying it or care for it much, because it's like, oh wait, this doesn't look anything like the original. I don't need to buy it, it's a WiiWare game, I hate WiiWare. Wasn't until last year when the Wii Point shutdown was announced and I realized I need to grab it just so I don't lose them when the store shuts down and I can't buy stuff anymore. So I bought all 3 REBIRTH games, and this particular one stuck out to me as much more memorable than the others. So, let's get onto everything that makes this game work, shall we? So remember how I mentioned that the original game was slow, boring, and forgettable? We'll throw all those dots out the window because my first impressions of this game was that holy frick, this background music is godlike. One amazing stage 1 theme that blows the original soundtrack out of the water. But if I may be honest, comparing this game to the original isn't practical like most remakes since it's not even a 1-to-1 remake. It's a total reimagining that just so happens to share the same story of Christopher Belmont and Dracula, and it also shares some elements such as the Fireball Whip and eyeball enemies this game has an obsession with at first. So the game's practically brand new. It plays very tightly and even has an option to make the jumps super smooth to control, in case you aren't a fan of the locked jumps from the older games. There's several difficulty modes and customizable options to give you extra lives, so this game is very flexible and a great game to get into if you're new to the series. So the first few stages are nothing really important to note outside of awesome music, because they fly by with no trouble at all if you're on the easiest setting and have any experience with platformers. Heck, stage 1 and 2 can be beaten on any difficulty, even if you don't have much experience with the series in general, because they're pretty basic if you just take the time. Stage 4 is when stuff gets tough because it actually becomes a maze, and if you choose to go out of the way and take alternate paths in the earlier stages, you can also make the game more difficult as a way of increasing challenge outside the options menu. All that stuff while this game still has that awesome soundtrack I mentioned earlier, and it's one of the best soundtracks in the series in my opinion. Seriously, every bit of the OST is ripped and remixed from other obscure games in the franchise, but not from the original Castlevania Adventure. A few tracks from the sequel, Belmont's Revenge, were picked to be remixed, but it makes me wonder why they didn't bother to give that the REBIRTH treatment. Then again, this game does have sub-weapons, which Belmont's Revenge had, but not the original Adventure, so maybe it's a best of obscure Castlevania game? Maybe that's what they could have advertised this as better. So ironically, the only stage theme from the original Adventure to be remixed for this game went totally unused. It's in the game's file and it's the first stage from Adventure, but it's unused. The only thing they actually used in the end was the little jingle for the title screen. But I'm very content with what we got with the final soundtrack, and it's actually been great exercise music when I go on walks. Either way, you get godlike remixes of tracks from Bloodlines, Chronicles, Haunted Castle from the arcade, and even Dracula X on the Super Nintendo, in the form of that little intro to stage bit. It's a very lovely tribute to the more obscure entries in the Castlevania franchise, and does all this while also being the first classic-style Castlevania made since the port of Chronicles. And if you count games that weren't remakes or ports, it's the first Castlevania classic game since Legends on the Game Boy. Easily the best part of the entire game comes from the magnificent 5th level, the final main stage of the game that will put all the abilities that you learned throughout the past 4 stages to the test, regardless of what options you picked, because the game's still gonna get a lot tougher even if you're on the easiest setting with max lives. All because it combines the best track of the entire game, a remix of Aquarius from Castlevania 3. Dear Lord, this song is just amazing. I didn't like Castlevania 3 much, this song stuck out to me though, and this remix is just mind-blowing. The stage is filled with tricky platforming challenges such as these moving pendulums, lots of traps in general that can lower health or outright kill you, and some of the toughest enemies in the game, all ready to confront you before you take on death at the very end of the stage. The final stage is just you vs Dracula, and it's a staircase, and it's not really a special fight at all. It's more or less generic, standard for the series. But it's way better than the lame teleport between platforms battle that the original game sported. It's just not as good as other games in the franchise that had more memorable Dracula battles. Heck, it's not even as good as some other bosses from the same game, because those were more challenging and actually a lot more on the toes than this. That being said, there was apparently a dud form that you can fight against that has a giant head once you beat this big bat thing that's from Castlevania 1. But I've never been able to fight it, and I don't know if it's because I play on easy with lots of extra lives, or because I lose to continue doing my playthroughs. But I'm still very satisfied from what I played in the playthrough a year ago, and what I played through when I gave it another spin a few days ago. So maybe someday I'll go to normal or hard and fight that form for real sometime. And yeah, that's pretty much Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth in a nutshell. For $10, it really isn't that long, or even as fun to replay as games such as Wand of Blood or the Metroidvania entries. But as a return to the classic style and just return to form in general, M2 nailed this game, and it turned one of the most infamous Castlevania titles into a name that's actually really good. It's easily one of the best classic Vanias in my opinion. There's just one problem with it nowadays if you want to check it out. You can't even buy it anymore. Yeah, despite how I bashed ReRare a few episodes ago and casually mentioned that the Rebirth series was a thing and it was cool, going back and playing this game a few weeks ago made me realize that this is one of the games that actually needs to be ported from ReRare to other systems ASAP. I still think that the other 2 Rebirth games aren't nearly as good as the games they take inspirations from, and are mostly forgettable and can just, well, give or take, come back. But this is a game that needs to be brought back no matter what. God, for a game that was only announced with an ESRB rating out of nowhere, and then released shortly after with little fanfare, this has gotta be one of the best Rebirth games out there. And I really wish I wasn't as stoned as I was back when this originally came out, and was willing to give Rebirth games, and third-party games in general, a chance, because this could have easily been a game to have some amazing memories with, as a good start for the franchise instead of the original Game Boy game. And there you have the not-so-tragic tale to some who didn't get to play this great game. It is tragic. Unlike Castlevania, The Adventure Rebirth is an obscure entry in the franchise, and why it's a damn good classic Castlevania game. And it's been years since the last ones come out in terms of any Castlevania game. This is the most recent classic Vania game, which is ironic since The Adventure Rebirth was made to revive the classic-style Castlevania series that died with Legends and Chronicles. And now it's dead again. And since the game's not even purchasable, it's deader than dead. It needs a rebirth of a rebirth. So yeah, it's the victim of digital online distribution in the sense that, stores shut down and games aren't buyable anymore. You can only play this through illicit means or just by having no system war like I do. But should you? Well, if you really want to, I guess I can't stop you, but I'm the one who waits for official re-releases of games whenever possible, and I would do that if I didn't get to play this last year, because, man, it's really good, and I'm still doing that in the sense to wait for other games I haven't been able to play. Bloodlines has never been re-released, and I don't have a Genesis, so I'm not going to play that anytime soon. And Belmont's Revenge, as I mentioned earlier, I've never been able to play, and I kind of want to play Game Boy Color version, but that's ultra rare, so I don't even know if that's feasible. I may just have to go to the old Game Boy car someday to check that out. There's other Castlevania games I haven't played that too. I haven't played any of the DS ones and 64 ones. There's so many I haven't played. And the ones I played, Wonder of Blood's my favorite, while this is not my second favorite. But of the classic series, it's really high up there. I think it's better than the main Nintendo games that everyone likes so much. So do you think I'd be up in arms wanting this to be physically printed on a disc and stuff to save for future generations, right? Well, not really. I don't really think it's dead or gone forever. You see, digital distribution to me is a case where games who are based off crappy licenses or just good licenses have to get pulled because they expire. Same with game copies of a physical game printed. There's only so many copies, and if it's a licensed game, it's not going to be as high as something like Tony Hawk, for instance. So I don't think Castlevania game pulled from the store along with every other WiiWare game is necessarily a sign of the end times. Made those virtual console games though, because some of them were pretty rare. So for WiiWare games like Castlevania Adventure Rebirth that aren't on our systems like PSN or Steam or Xbox, what should we do if the games get removed because the store shuts down? Is this a problem that's going to happen 20 years from now? Who knows, but because everyone preserves stuff online, dumps games online, I don't think we'll worry about them going lost media. Besides, physical copies can wear out or get lost, so it's not like they're invincible either. And I have faith that Konami will re-release the Rebirth series in some fashion on modern systems. They literally just did that with the PSP versions of Wonder of Blood and Symphony. People are mad about the Symphony Night being the new and not the old version. I think Adventure Rebirth is gonna get re-released someday. M2's porting stuff like the Cave shooters, some company called Cave I've never heard of before this year. They're porting that on PS4, and then they're porting Sega games on Switch in high-quality preservation formats. If they're the masters of preserving games, who's to say they can't preserve their own? Konami's willing to work for anyone, and some edgy people are like, oh, F Konami, and stick up them because of what they did to some guy. I could care less about Konami nowadays, because they're clearly doing what's making them money, and that's better than them dying like Hudson Soft. Don't get me wrong though, I don't like you for stealing my Hudson, because that means no PC engine. But I digress. I don't think Konami's as evil as people think they are, though I do worry about the workers. So I think they'll re-release this in due time. Castlevania got a new show lately, and the new compilation means they'll probably re-release other games. So I think M2 will be allowed to re-release the Rebirth series sometime in the future. So I'm not too worried about not being able to play this anymore if my Wii dies. But for you guys who want to check this out, I do encourage you to do whatever you need to check it out. Or, if it does come out on all systems like Steam and then we can all be happy once more, I'll be happy for that too. So until next time on Eternal Memories, once I hopefully put this out to you guys without an editing disaster, I don't know what's the next episode gonna be. I still need to think about what's on my to-do list, some arcade games I kind of want to review shortly. I mean, some games I think about doing, like the Pac-Man Museum review, I don't end up doing for a short of time, like this episode. So who knows, it could be hit or miss like always. But I have faith that we'll get some good deeds done from this review, and hopefully a sign of positivity for my channel. Maybe more people will see this video. Please share, maybe? So that'll be it for this episode of Eternal Memories, and I'll say, bye.